everybody, and welcome to the Backstory podcast. I'm very honored today to start doing some more interviews with people that I think you guys would be very interested in hearing from. We just happen to have on our staff a person who is a birth doula, and we also have a person who's a death doula. So today I get to interview the death doula, who also happens to be a very good friend of mine for many years, Gail Harris. So Gail, welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail was involved a lot with helping me produce the book, Crossing the Veil. She's been really active in this work quite a bit, and she's been a volunteer here at Espavo for many years now. So she's been a part of the team for a long time. I'm really honored to have you here, but you've kind of split off and go in a really unique direction, and you've been the executive producer of a very important movie that I'd like to you'd like to tell about, and then we'll talk about the whole death doula process and the importance of it and what you're doing with that. So tell me a little bit about this movie.
Well, speaking of backstories, I should probably give you the backstory as to why I even got involved in the movie. And that was years ago, many years ago, actually, in 1999, I became very interested in the whole concept around conscious living. And so I created and produced a series for public television in the United States, PBS, called Body and Soul. And it was all about ways in which people could live more consciously. And then after that, there was a long pause in being able to do that kind of work directly. But I found myself moving with my husband to Asheville, North Carolina, had gotten a nudge to go there. Wasn't really sure why, but thought, okay, I seem to be getting this nudge. And as it turned out, Asheville, North Carolina is the site of a place called the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, which did seem to be a pretty interesting connection to my logical next step to my work around conscious living. And the center was founded by the experience of its founder, Dr. Aditi Sethi, who was originally a palliative care physician, who was summoned to the bedside of a young man named Ethan Sisser. Ethan Sisser was a 36-year-old yoga teacher and masseuse, and he, at age 36, was diagnosed with a terminal brain cancer.
Now, when you mean palliative care, that's end of life?
That's end of life care.
Okay, good.
Yes. And Ethan was told that there was nothing they could do, that they tried surgery and that didn't work, and chemo wouldn't work, and basically they said, go home and get ready to die. Dr. Sethi, who was his palliative care physician, was tremendously impressed by what he had done already in his young life. After he got this death sentence, he decided that he was going to cherish every single moment of his life. He was going to live it with as much positivity as he could. He shared his journey for months on social media, and so there were thousands of people around the world who were following his journey all along the way. And then for the last 2 weeks of his life, he wanted it to be documented. So Dr. Sethi had a friend in California who was a documentary filmmaker. She called him up. He got on the next plane, and so he recorded the last 2 weeks of Ethan's life.
Wow.
And the other thing that happened in the midst of all of this, Ethan not only wanted to share his journey, but he did not want to die alone. He did not want to be afraid. He wanted to be surrounded by love, if that were possible. He didn't know if it were possible. Dr. Sethi summoned a group of caregivers to be at his side. And that's what makes this film so powerful.
Wow.
Because here are these people who came in. One of Aditi's friends had a house overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains in western North Carolina, just outside Asheville. And she brought in her caregiving friends, some of whom were hospice nurses, some of whom one practiced in traditional indigenous medicine, who brought that. There was a rabbi, there were various, all kinds of spiritual leaders who came in to be part of this and to be with him on this journey. And it's so amazing as you watch this film because they didn't know him, he didn't know them, but the love in that room was palpable. And
It's
it continues in his journey until his last breath. And the first time I saw this film, it completely blew me away. I thought everybody everywhere should see this. And when I was invited to become an executive producer, I thought, okay, I've never produced a movie before, but I've certainly been involved in television,
Yep.
and maybe they're not that different. And so that has been my work in bringing Ethan's story to as many people as possible. And because of Ethan's experience, it gave Dr. Aditi Sethi the impetus to found the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. And as I said a moment ago, it's now there, it's on the ground, it's on 6.5 beautiful acres in suburban Asheville, overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains. There are 250 volunteers who come in and take shifts. There are now 3 people at a time who can be cared for at the center. And it is starting to get some real attention. And I was part of the first official end-of-life doula class. There's the second one that's happening now. Mine started last spring.
Amazing.
So that's a big backstory. I'll let you pick that up
the
wherever you'd like,
backstory.
Steve.
So the center is open now. It was open as a result of doing the movie. Is that what? Wow.
Yes, yes, this whole experience led Aditi. She had felt since she was a teenager.
Right.
Her father was a physician. She went to medical school, became this palliative care hospice physician. And she just looked at the way that most people die these days with, to the sound of beeping hospital monitors. And the last touch is from somebody wearing latex gloves. And
Yes.
she just looked at that, and she is a very heart-centered person and said, we've got to do better than this. And so when Ethan came along into her life and she was able to summon this group of caregivers to work on, all right, what might this model look like? How might we be able to do this and help people make a more peaceful passing?
That's
And
amazing.
that led to the acquisition of the property. As I say, 6.5 beautiful acres. There is a home on it that now has been restored to have 3 suites in the lower level. The upstairs part is still a house. Families can come and stay in the house, and the families, if they wish to stay there, pay for their room and board, but the person who's being cared for is cared for completely free of charge.
Oh, that's wonderful. And
Talk
and,
about a new model.
and the families are there. They can come and visit, or how does that work?
They can be there the entire time if they
Oh,
wish.
can they
When
really?
I was
Wow.
there, the course of this end-of-life death doula work that I received was 10 weeks of online classes that were very intense. It was 2 hours every Monday evening from 5 to 7. And each of these classes required about 4 to 6 hours of prep.
Wow.
A lot of reading, watching films, contemplating what all this means to you, what your experience brings to bear to this whole thing, because this can be very gnarly, difficult material for many people. And part of the real strength of the program, I think, is educating us that
That's it.
people used to die in community, surrounded by family. That's not so much the case anymore. And so if you are inspired to want to do this kind of work yourself or somehow become part of it, there's a base of knowledge that you need to have. So it was 10 weeks of online work with those classes, followed by a weekend retreat in which all of us who
nice.
had been just meeting each other over Zoom, from around the country. There were a couple of people from outside the United States, in fact, who were part of this. And everybody came together in Asheville at the center and spent 3 more intense days. And after that, the groups were divided into 3, the doula apprentices, and that was our apprenticeship. We spent 6 days of shadowing people who were doing the actual work. And so you did whatever shift. You had a chance to do a morning shift, an afternoon shift, or an evening shift. So you really got a sense of how the days kind of ebb and flow and how thoughtfully this is designed, again, dealing with a lot of different issues with families, with not just the departing person, but the families often have issues.
Yeah.
And you might have to broker peace among competing visions as to how
Yeah.
this thing should
Belief
go.
systems, all the rest of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that's involved in it. And what my takeaway from it is that it was intense and it was rigorous and it was heart-opening in ways that I really could not have anticipated. But I'm so grateful that I did it.
Oh, good. Let's show the website real quick. And if you can tell people, I can't show them the URL. So if you can tell them how to get there.
Sure, this is the visual that one of the very talented artists who became involved in the movie early on came up with, and I love it so much. The title of the film is The Last Ecstatic Days. It is played in film festivals, and it is also available to be shown online. If somebody would like to do a screening for their friends or people they know who are wrestling with these kinds of issues. So it is The Last Ecstatic Days Movie.com.
Okay.
Or just Google on The Last Ecstatic Days,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
it came up for me right away. So I just put in the last ecstatic and it came right up. So that's perfect.
Well, that
Awesome.
was Ethan's mantra as he went through this. What he said repeatedly to his thousands of people following him was, I am embodied, I am empowered, and I am ecstatic.
Oh,
And he would
beautiful.
always do that with a big smile. And sometimes, that smile, you could tell he was in pain. It
Yeah.
was not always an easy journey by any means, but he absolutely got the send off that he wanted. He was absolutely surrounded by love, and he was not afraid.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, the group has obviously talked a lot about this. That's why we ended up writing the book. And of course, my wife's death, Barbara's death, had a lot to do with bringing all this together, even though her and I had taught these courses all over the world in different places. We called them transition team trainings. The reality is it all came together, and oh man, some of these hospice workers, they have just, I just can't say enough about people that have a consciousness to do this. I mean, I'm sure they're doing it to make a living. I'm sure they're doing it as a job as well, but the heart energy involved in some of this is absolutely magical. And there's so much fear around death. That's the challenge about it. We get so afraid of it, and so projecting into the future and all the other crazy stuff, that it gets really, really overwhelming sometimes. But if you're able to share that with anybody who's passing, the reality is you will never forget it. It will change your life, and it did mine with Barbara. Absolutely. Absolutely magical. And I have been fortunate enough to be a part of other people's passing as well. Not always that I'm there, but they call me sometimes for, sessions or just to let off some steam, and to find out what the group has to say about it. And the reality is it's such a beautiful process. It makes it difficult because we're going to miss that person, obviously. There's a lot of grieving around it. But tell me about your experience. You were able during this course. You were able to actually work with people and people's families and so forth, right?
Well, the apprenticeship was absolutely that. It was hands-on. It was being there, present with the person who was about to make their transition, being with the families and helping them. It's things as simple and mundane as making sure that the sheets are clean,
Oh
and
yeah.
that they are taken care of, that their needs are being met. And that's such an important part of the work as well, is what can I do for you? And as you say, it is absolutely sacred work, and you
No, it
feel
really
it.
is.
You feel it just being in that environment. I have not been with any family members or anyone who was in the process as you have, Steve, but I was very curious about the process. And one of the things I wondered about in terms of the doula training was, is it possible for someone to care so completely about a total stranger that doing this work could feel life affirming instead of scary, and absolutely heartwarming? Uh, it changes you. That's one of the reasons why I'm now saying very enthusiastically to anybody who will listen, you really ought to do this training. Or if you can't do the training, at least consider that there are other ways in which we can depart the planet. Because if in fact, as I've heard, the way we depart makes a difference in the way we come back next time,
That's exactly what the group says. That's it.
isn't this wonderful work to be doing to
Yeah.
make sure that all of us are departing, say, the 76 million baby boomers like me who are going to be moving on
Me
in the
too.
next 10, 20, 30
Yep.
years, whatever? Wouldn't this be really important work to be able to make sure that that passage was loving and not scary?
That's true.
So that the next time,
Yeah,
even
exactly.
better.
Exactly. The group says that the group talked about that, and I got to tell this to some of the people that were in the hospice and were helping us with different things. We even had a spiritual person came in. She was actually a priest. Now I've got all kinds of resistance for there. I just wanted to kind of, and she was just the most beautiful, loving person, able to talk back and forth and really connect with me, even with my resistance toward religion, toward organized religion. Absolutely fascinating. So these people really have a heart connection. And the group says, I was able to share this with them. The group actually says they are the greatest healers on the planet. But nobody knows that because all their patients die. So,
Well, that is certainly true. And in fact, the director of education for the doula program at the CCLD, the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, is this amazing woman, Hannah Fowler. She's a longtime hospice nurse, and she designed this program of doula training for that I was in, and that will be an ongoing work that happens. And she brings all the right heart and sensibilities to it, because I agree that, that there also are people from hospice who come in. I often get the question, what's the difference between what a doula does and what hospice does? There are hospice nurses who would come in, and still do, obviously, as an ongoing part of this program at the center, to check on the patients who are there, the residents who are there, and they, I agree. I mean, it's wonderful, the work that they do.
yeah,
The difference is that the hospice folks came in and they had their list of things that they needed to do.
right.
And it was very precise, and it was lovely. And you could see that these people are deeply invested in the value of their work, as they should be. The difference between that and a doula is that the doula is there pretty much 24/7. I mean, they certainly are at the center. There are shifts of people who are there 24/7. And in home care, it varies, depending on where you are and what, if you wanted to have a doula come into your home, it's
Right.
just, it depends on how they work. But that sort of ongoing, literally to be there and hold the hand of the person, if that's what they want,
Yeah.
to dab balm on their lips when they get chapped, to do whatever needs to be done, to keep the family calm, to make sure their favorite music is being played, to make sure there are flowers in the room and candles if that's what they want, to really make it a sacred process instead of a sterile one.
That's true. When Barbara was passing, she was in so much pain, she had to have morphine. So she seemed to go out completely. She wasn't consciously there, but she was there. You could not only tell it, but what we did during that 3 days that we had, probably about last 2 days, she was completely knocked out on morphine. But during that time, we were calling everybody. And we'd get her brother on the phone. The moment her brother started talking, she'd smile a little bit, just a little bit. You could tell she heard. You could tell she was in there. And we just talked to her the whole time. Absolutely. It was very, very, very magical. Very beautiful. All right, you're going to get me going now.
Well, and I was going to say, for those of us, it's such a shame because most of us are not raised around any of this.
That's
You know,
right.
we don't talk about it. We're afraid of it. We
Crazy.
don't tell our kids about it. We don't teach children about it. You know, one day grandpa's there and the next day he's gone, and you know, maybe nobody ever talks about him again, but they just look sad if it should come up. You know, this is part of life. You know, we need to be able to be more open about it and about how we approach it. And one of the traditions at the CCLD, which I so admire, if you wish, once you are in the last couple of weeks before your transition, you can have a fire lit at the center. There is
Oh,
a
nice.
fire tender. There is a whole group of volunteers who do nothing but tend this fire. The fire goes until the time that you have passed, at which point the fire is put out. And the fire itself becomes a place where families gather,
Right.
doula students gathered. It was a place where I would always come and check in before I was doing a shift. And there are really important, tender moments that happen around there too, because you're there with the families. Maybe you're
Yeah,
sitting in
exactly.
silence together. If they want to talk, you'll listen actively. It's just a very different, heart-centered way of giving our loved ones a peaceful passing.
That's it. Graduation. Graduation.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, loved ones or complete strangers. And
Yep.
and that's the thing that I really did find interesting. You really do get involved with folks. You know, you never saw them before,
Yep.
but the person and their passing and everything that goes on around that really becomes important.
That's magical. That's magical. So you yourself are not doing this work professionally. Is that what I understand? You have so many things going on in your life. I
I
know
do.
you. I know you don't. But so you don't actually do that. You don't have a business card where people can call you or something of that nature.
I do not, but if you're interested in doing the training, I would certainly encourage you to call the Center for Conscious Living and Dying in Asheville, if that's something that you think you might like to do. The other reason I wanted to do it, quite frankly, in addition to, I thought if I'm going to be out talking to people about this movie and the importance of
Right.
it and what doula work is all about, I need to do it. I need to walk the walk. I need to be able to understand it as someone who has actually seen it, as opposed to someone who's just kind of looked at it from afar. So that was one of the reasons. And also one of the reasons is I'm in my 70s. I have friends and loved ones, you know, and I will certainly be able to be there for them in a different way, in a very different way than I would have before, because I won't be afraid. I will feel much more confident about how I can be helpful to them and to anyone else. So, you know, just kind of selfishly, I wanted to know what to do. But
Absolutely.
even beyond that, if I were to be asked, you know, it's sort of like officiating a wedding. You know, you
Right.
never think of yourself as being somebody who might do that, but if somebody you love asks you to, of course you're going to be there.
That's magical. Yes, I've done a few weddings myself, and I don't I don't advertise them. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's beautiful. Yes, yeah. This is something the group says over and over in channel. They said every one of you is not only going to die, but you're going to experience other people's deaths several times in your life. Why aren't we teaching this in school? Why don't
Exactly.
we? I mean, I understand we've got all sorts of this. These people think this is the way to do it. These people think this way is to do it. We've got all these belief systems that have different aspects of it. And I can't help but feel maybe that's part of the reason we don't broach those subjects in school, but they come up in school all the time. My
Mhm.
fiance's a teacher. She has to deal with it on a regular basis with her high school students. Just, as neutral as you can with it, but to be able to be there with that. So, well, my dear, I'm really pleased about you doing this. I saw you get involved with the movie, and I said, "Oh, this is perfect," because you've done so much television work yourself with the work that you've done, especially with PBS. and quite a bit of the stuff that you've done. So it was really, really wonderful to see you get involved with it. But I never dreamed you'd actually take the course. That's magical. That is magical.
Well, I don't know what it was, Steve. I just felt this is something I need to do. And I am truly so grateful that I did it.
Oh,
And
really?
it's something that I encourage every time the movie is shown. It's interesting. I've now been moderating a panel on panel discussions several times. Most recently for the Asheville Ideas Fest, which is a gathering of smart, interesting people from all over the country who come in to the campus of UNC Asheville
Right.
once a year, and it's 3 days of very interesting. It is an ideas festival, basically. And so this time, this past June, I moderated a panel discussion around issues of preparing for a graceful exit, how this can be a graceful exit. It doesn't have to be one where you're kicking and screaming and terrified. So this was to about 300 or 400 people who came to this. And
Oh,
then in the
nice.
afternoon, we did the panel discussion for about an hour and then broke for lunch. And in the afternoon, we came back and we showed the film. And there were people from the center who came and moderated discussions. There were small groups, kind of breakout sessions. And this happens at every public event that I've been to that has shown this movie, because people sit and nobody moves,
Right.
nobody crinkles paper, nobody, heads for the exit. It's very powerful stuff. And we always make sure that there are plenty of Kleenexes for the breakout sessions afterward, because so many people really do have such issues around grief and loss
Yeah.
and don't know what to do about it and don't know how to feel about it. And this notion of, oh, well, you'll get over it. Yeah, we can do that better too. And so that's also a really important part of the center's work is let's help people deal with issues and wounds that haven't healed for them. And boy, you see them when you get a group of people in a room of
Yeah,
just
I'm sure.
what the cost is emotionally when you don't deal with grief and loss. But there are better ways of handling that as well.
Well, that's what we used to get a lot when we do those seminars all over the world in different places. The transition team seminars, people would have their own stories. So it was so beautiful because everything was validating what the group was saying. So it was really, really special to be able to do that. And you could see them starting to heal. Again, they don't always have a chance to talk about it in a safe space. So it was really magical to do that and to be able to have that space available for people. I'll probably have to do it again at some point. So
Yeah, I hope you will, because I think the work that you and Barbara were doing years ago around this was really important. I think sometimes ideas have to simmer a little while.
Right.
There are the brave people like you and Barbara who are getting out there, who got out there to put this out there. As I look at the trajectory of ideas, and I'm a journalist, I've been a journalist for decades. And so it's interesting to me to see that art go from new idea, what? No, that's ridiculous. Why would anybody think that? To, oh, well, that sounds interesting. To, well, of course, everybody knows that,
yes,
right?
it,
So,
it's moving.
you know,
No,
they're,
we're planting a lot of seeds about it, but
yeah,
it's
they're the
amazing.
trailblazers. And then, I think we're inching up on the, oh, sure, well, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
And I look forward to the day, wherever I might be at that point, of, well, yes, of course.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think we're getting there because it's just like you said too. The baby boom generation's getting older. We're starting to leave en masse. Well, I'm not planning on leaving right away, but you never know. But the reality is, I'm not afraid of it, and that's the most important part. I've seen that happen. The group has actually shown me that we basically store. It's what they call the veil, but they say the veil isn't something you put over your face. It's actually a space. And when we come in, we leave all of our memories of previous lifetimes in that veil, and we have to go back through and integrate all the things that we did in that as we leave. And then when we come back in, we pick up where we left off. And if we left angry, if we left frustrated, if we left in fear, we've all seen angry babies. We've all seen that situation take place, and many times, and Although there's many aspects of that. I don't want to say that that's all one thing, but at the same time, it's we can help everybody move through this planet and this experience of being a human much easier if we just talk about it. You know, I'm older than my fiance. I'm quite a bit older than she is. We talk about it. We talk about when I leave, when, you know, what's going to happen. She talks about her fears about it. I talk about what I'd like to see and all the rest of it. And I really think that makes it so much easier to be able to do that and to be able to plan ahead and be able to see what they're. You know, my father, when he passed, he told us for years. He was divorced from my mother, and he played a lot of tennis. And he said, I'm going to either die on the tennis court after making a match point or in bed with a beautiful blonde. He happened to be married to a very attractive blonde, and he died on the tennis court after winning a match point. So, you know, we do get what we plan sometimes. I'd love to be able to tell that story from time to time. It's very magical. Good. Anything else?
One of the things I have found so interesting about taking this course as well is that, I mean, you know me, I'm not exactly the shy retiring type, but there is clearly so much of a hunger. People want to hear this because going through it, I will now just kind of pipe up every now and again at a dinner with people that I don't really know all that well. Oh, I just finished this very interesting end-of-life doula course. Boy, that's a conversation stopper.
Yeah,
and then people lead in and they say, oh, tell me. And as I tell them some of these stories, they really clearly are hungering for that reassurance.
Yes.
That it matters, that they matter. And that's part of what this training does as well, is that really, as a doula, part of your job is not just to kind of physically care for people, it's to emotionally care for them, so that they can have that ease and comfort that their life mattered, that they matter, that their wishes are going to be honored and acknowledged. And all of that is part of just a much healthier way of dealing with something that is, after all, the second other thing that every human has in common.
Yes.
We're all going to do it.
Absolutely. We're all going to go through it, and we're going to experience other people's as well. Do you work with grieving much with the family? I know you work with them while they're going through the process. And of course, we have all sorts of grieving. Much of the grieving happens beforehand on a long-term illness before a death, whereas a sudden illness, people are dealing with it right in that moment and much later. How does that work with this organization, with what you're doing?
They have a very robust grief and loss program. There are ongoing sessions at the center for people who are dealing with this. There are very specific things that they do with the families as part of the process. There are ceremonies around the person's passing. It's not just, oh, okay, next, you know.
Right.
And that matters too. You know, again, this whole idea of, oh, well, you lost a beloved partner, you'll get over it, you'll be fine. And then a year later, really? You're not over it yet?
No, you don't. I don't think you actually get over it. I think we integrate it.
Exactly.
I think we carry that forward with us. I hope I never get over it. And I hear from Barbara regularly, so her spirit's here. So, you know, that's amazing. I'm absolutely convinced that that's why I'm in love again too. That happens all the time from my perspective. So. It's
absolutely.
Very
I'm pretty
amazing.
sure she's smiling and saying, well,
that's
yeah,
right.
Of course. What do you think? I was nudging both of you.
Well, we used to talk about this in those seminars, and we used to talk about that, and I always assumed I would go first. I never dreamt that she would go before me. But here we are, you know, and like I said, I see rainbows all the time, which were her signature. And I find the feathers everywhere too, which were her other signatures. So it's been amazing. So we do it. Tell me the name again of the movie.
The movie is The Last Ecstatic Days.
The Last Ecstatic Days. Gail Harris.
And that arose out of Ethan's insistence that he was going to be ecstatic and curious and interested right up to the end. And he was.
Marvelous. What a gift he gave us. What an incredible gift. Gail, thank you so much for being here, Gail Harris. Thank you. You're an angel, my dear, and thank you for being such a part of our team all these years. You've helped us touch a lot of people.
Well,
Take care. Thanks. Thank you again. And
thank
again,
you.
take a
My
look.
pleasure. I've learned so much from you and the group over the years, and Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, I'll return it to you now. So anyway, thank you for being here, everybody. Go take a look at that movie. It's an incredible gift that everybody can use, and it can really start to open up some conversations in your family and help people heal before they need it. Aspava, everybody. Thanks for being with us.